Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hope y'all are here saying hello. I see a lot of people are checking out some things here, and let me turn some things down because it looks like their quality is not that great according to what I'm viewing. And I will probably have to get out of that and turn that off. Yeah, it's showing quality is not so great. Can y'all hear me at all? So what I might have to do is I might have to put it up on my window here, and then I'll have to get into it up here. Add the one sec. Okay, 1 second, folks. Bear with me. I will focus on this. We will get this sorted out. Not bread alone. Okay, and there it is. Okay, all right. I will have to log back into this here in a second. 5x5, good. Maybe it's just on my end. Oh, maybe it's overheated. I don't know. But the quality is looking kind of meh. So we'll get out of that there. All right. So, good morning. Today we're going to be dealing with 1 Samuel chapter 17. I have set aside this one is in the King James version, so it'll be a little bit different than the New King James version. But I do have a video ready. But I wanted to show you guys some interesting aspects of it when I'm doing some of my research here. What's up? We got Casey in the house, Afro Audits, Cliff Williams, Freddie, Rats to the Moon. We got Dove, Morning Mist. Hello, good morning. Cliff, I already said Cliff. Who else? I know Tim is in here, I think, somewhere. Let me scroll back. Some of y'all have been in here for a hot minute, which is awesome. Epic Roller, good to see you. Phoenix, good to see you. Mystic Cat. All right. Yeah. Good stuff. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you this right here. And we'll let this play. So the question is, I just can't see how they were able to kill prey with them things, right? So this is I think this is like an islander, right? You hear that crack? That's kind of impressive, right? All right, let me move this real quick. And I'm going to go ahead and go to here. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. The question is, in the world? No, I didn't want that. Hold on. I wanted to copy that. Copy link. There we go. Sorry about that. Let me share that. Sorry, duct tape production over here as well, apparently. Let's present this. Share the screen. So this will give you a little idea of the height, right? So David, they're estimating at the time as a young shepherd boy, was 5'3". The average man is about 5'9". Goliath this would be Goliath at 4.5 cubits. That would be Robert Wadlow at 8'11". Goliath at 5.5 cubits or 9'6". And Goliath at 6.5 cubits, 11'3". Can you imagine that's towering over you, right? It'd be quite interesting. All right, so we're going to share this, and we're gonna get into our study, and I hope that the sound is good.
1 Samuel 17. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shochoh, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shochoh and Azekah in Ephes-dammim, And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span.
So 6 cubits and a span. 6 cubits and a span, right? Well, what's 6 cubits in a span? All right. How big was Goliath? When we talked about it. So 6 cubits, 6.5 cubits would be 6 cubits in a span. So as we demonstrated before, that's at 4.5 cubits. That's at 9.6 cubits. Or 5.5. That's Goliath. 11 foot 3 inches. Okay.
And he had an helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield went before him. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are ye come out to set your battle in array? Am I not a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us. And the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together.
So that practice was basically we see something similar in mythology where Achilles often was the champion of an army, and they would send their champion out against Achilles. If Achilles would win, then they would win the day, and then a tribute would be paid. Instead of everyone dying or suffering, they would send a champion out to fight in their stead, right? So championing a cause, the terminology.
Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine. They were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David
so the challenge was issued, and it caused God's chosen to be very afraid. Now this line right here really sparks an interest in my mind. God did not give us a spirit of fear, right? So if God didn't give them a spirit of fear, why were they trembling in that moment? Why were they afeared? Why were they afraid, right? They were afraid because they lacked faith. That's the only explanation I can come up with.
The son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. And the names of his 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab the firstborn, and next unto him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep.
All right, so this was like a battle. It's probably you're sitting there, you're trying to understand. Well, okay, well, how is it that all this time seems to be passing? So the way things would normally be is the eldest son would be the one that would champion, right? And then all these people weren't considered to be worthy. And David, knowing, being the youngest, went about his father's business of, taking care of his sheep. But here, this is going to get really interesting.
Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren.
Okay, so 40 days of this taunting was going on. And he kept drawing nearer and nearer, taunting. So this span of 40 days to get this all these things to transpire and to happen, it will give you a little bit of insight. It's not like, this all happened within a 24 or 48 hour span of time. This was, a long time of taunting.
ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp of thy brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning, and left the sheep with the keeper, and took and went, as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench, as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words. And David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel.
So a little bit of backstory as to why we chose this topic. Cliff and I were talking, and there have been many. I'll see. How would you say this? There have been many times where I've said some things in my other channel that he's kind of scratched his head about, and when we talk about being afraid to speak the truth, right? We are champions of freedom in the other channel, and we seek to go out and speak freely, right? Our First Amendment. And so the interesting thing is, there are those that would want to shout you down. There are those that would want to silence you and prevent you from speaking truth to something. And the fear of failure, the fear of judgment, or the fear of ramifications for speaking boldly will silence many tongues, right? And some people just cower, and they'll be afraid to speak truth to power. I don't know of any example of speaking truth to power that is embodied more than the story of David versus Goliath. And I showed you that they estimated that David, a young shepherd boy at the time, was about 5'3". Young, right? And Goliath was over 11 foot. I mean, that's quite a difference. But yet he sat there, and you're going to see he was bold. It reminds me of the Proverbs 28:1, where the wicked flee while no one pursueth, but the bold will stand. The righteous will stand bold as lions.
And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God?
All right, so the interesting thing here is, and David spake to the men and stood by him, saying, What shall be done? So he's basically saying, well, is no one going to stop this man? Is no one going to stand? Why are you all cowards? So the interesting thing is, like, and a lot of people will give me, like, I'm constantly giving myself grief about the fact that sometimes I say some words that I wish I wouldn't say, that I rise to a level of anger that I wish I wouldn't. The interesting thing is, this chapter 26, 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 26, this particular verse right here, it sounds all nice and polite. But if you listen to Father Knows Best in the 50s, and then you compare it to Married with Children, in the 90s, and then you compare it to the stuff that we're seeing on TV now, what we consider to be normal in the moment now is back then would have been like scandalous to have said these things, right? So when you say David spake to the men, right? Let me go ahead and maximize this so I can see it here. David spake to the men that stood by him, so his side. And he says, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine? Meaning Goliath. And taketh away the reproach from Israel. So who's going to answer this uncircumcised Philistine? who blasphemes God's people, right? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? If God be for us, who can stand against us, right? So they lacked faith. They were scared. They were worried. They were nervous about this situation. So that's that they're being shaken. So that ye of little faith, right?
And the people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness?
So it's interesting. So if we unplug this, so Eliab, his eldest brother, is basically kind of like, oh, you're just coming down here to taunt us, right? Like you're a shepherd boy, and who's watching the sheep? You know, that was your job. Your job was to watch the sheep. Why aren't you watching the sheep? Well, it's interesting because there's a parallel here. Because David was a shepherd boy and he was responsible for his father's flock. Right? Unplug that. Let's expound upon that. David was a shepherd boy who was responsible for his father's flock. Jesus was a son of God who was responsible for his father's flock. Right? So David, in this moment, the shepherd boy, did do his due diligence and put someone in charge of the sheep and went down to join the army and basically said, why is there not going to be an answer to this uncircumcised Philistine? If you're not going to take care of God's people, I will shepherd God's people. Right? It's pretty interesting to me that there's a parallel there. The parallel is even David as a young, as Dove was saying, as a young teenager, as a shepherd boy, was a shepherd to God's chosen people in that moment. And here we go.
I know thy pride, and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? And he turned from him toward another, and spake after the same manner. And the people...
So he's basically accusing David of wanting to see him fall. So the eldest son, thinking it was his knowing it was his responsibility to fight Goliath in his father's stead, was basically saying, you're just here to watch me fall, aren't you? You're just here to mock me. You're just here to see, you're here to see the bloodshed. You're here to gloat, right? And David's like, what have I done? Now what have I done? Is there not a cause here? Are we not God's chosen? Are we not going to stand against those who blaspheme God's chosen? Like, why, what is it? Why is it, how is this my fault? You know, why are you coming at me? You know, I'm here saying, who's going to challenge this guy? Who's going to silence this guy's mouth?
Answered him again after the former matter. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine
so
to fight.
Even David in this moment, and David said unto Saul, who's King Saul, said, Thy servant, he put himself below Saul. Thy servant kept his father's sheep. Right? And there came a lion and a bear and took a lamb out of the flock. That's powerful. What did we talk about before? That the devil is a lion that roams to and fro, seeking whom he may devour. Whom he may devour, which means you have to give the devil permission to devour you. Right? Whoever is in God's hand cannot be plucked from his hand. You have to allow these things to happen. Just like you have to allow God into your life, you also have to reject God, because whoever God puts into his hand cannot be pulled from it, but you can pull yourself out of God's hand.
Fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God.
Woo! The boldness. I got goosebumps all down my back. Just the boldness. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear. It's my job to protect the flock as a shepherd. It's your job to protect the flock as the king of the Jews, King Saul, right? Seeing that it defile the armies of the living God, this Philistine must fall too, as the lion and the bear did. I'm not afraid. Why are you afraid? The faith.
David said, moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion, and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and the Lord be with thee. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put an helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail.
So the interesting thing is, so Saul was trying to put David in the trappings of a warrior. But David wasn't a warrior in that sense, right? He wasn't Saul. He wasn't. When you try to get into the shoes of somebody that you're not, when you try to be something or someone you're not, you're going to fail. Know thyself. You have to know who you are, right? In order to know what you're capable of. So just because you have the armor of a warrior does not mean that you are a warrior, right? If you have the heart of a shepherd, but you're a servant of the Most High God, you don't need all that armor. You have the armor of God. You don't have the armor of man. You have the armor of God, right? So the interesting thing is, and I want to do a Bible study on the armor of God sometime, and how it kind of reminds me of a, I guess you could say, a comic book hero or a comic book villain, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But Batman, I mean, Batman basically had the armor of God on, in a sense, in a secular world, right? He had a helm that he could allow him to see through walls or to see heat signatures. He had a breastplate that protected him. I mean, because Batman wasn't superhuman. Batman wasn't like didn't have special powers. He was just a man with a bunch of gadgets, right? The belt, the boots, girding up his loins. It's quite interesting. When you're fully equipped with the tools of God, right? You can do great things, but it's not you who's doing the great things. It's because you're putting on the whole armor of God that allows you to do those great things. But we will do a study on that at some point in time, and how that kind of equates to what I consider to be Batman and what he does.
And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not.
So he refused to go at that point and put them off, meaning he took them off. He said, I can't go with this. This isn't what I'm used to. I don't roam the world with this kind of armor. It would be silly, it'd be foolish. This is Saul's armor. This is Saul's sword. This is the trappings of what made Saul Saul, right? These aren't things that made David David.
Proved them, and David put them off him. And he took his staff in his hand, and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even
So
in a
very
scrip.
interesting. Very interesting. Why, class, do you think David chose 5 smooth stones? Isn't that interesting? 5 smooth stones. Did he think he was going to miss? Did he want to make sure he had extra ammo in case he missed? Or could it be that Goliath had 4 brothers? Hmm. Hmm. Huh. So Goliath plus his 4 brothers would be 5 stones. So what happens when someone goes after your brother on the battlefield and kills your brother? Would you not go to aid your brother? But David, 5 smooth stones. Goliath had 4 brothers. So he knew he was going to come for it. He was going to take care of that blaspheming, uncircumcised Philistine and his brothers.
And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves?
So it says, yes, I'd like to point out that over and over again, choose the smallest, the least, and the ridiculous to further his kingdom, and demonstrating this over and over again. The Jews still didn't accept. Yeah. The simpleness of the Savior. Yeah. Yeah, he came as a lamb, and they thought he was supposed to be a conquering hero. And that's why they rejected him. It's quite interesting. Yeah. Um Well, it calls to mind when we are weak, he gets to be strong, right? We can show off God in our life, when we find ourselves in a situation that, Lord, I can't do this on my own, but I can only do this if you're with me, Lord. And if you be with me, then who can stand against me?
And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the
So I mean,
Philistine,
that's a big taunt, dude. He's like basically saying, you come at me, man, I'm gonna feed you to the crows. You're gonna be crow food. You're gonna be feeding the birds. Now it's churched up. It's churched up. And this is what I'm saying. Like, when people say I should probably take it a little easy on myself when I get all passionate and, I drop some F bombs or whatever every now and then and listen, this is probably not the place to even be, but I'm confessing right now. When David was calling Goliath an uncircumcised Philistine, right? I mean, that's churched up. I mean, who knows what he was saying to this guy, but they churched it up, right? You know, for for the politeness of the times, perhaps.
Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee. And I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all
So
this
he's
is
challenging them back. He's basically saying, no, no, no. God's with me. You're the one who's going to feed the crows. And this day, everyone will know there is a God in Israel. Everyone will know. It'll be undeniable. I mean, this story lives on.
assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew
Now, there is some speculation, there is some murmurings that, in a sense, David cheated. Okay. And by cheating, I mean, normally this kind of combat was done with melee weapons. Melee weapons means, sword, spear, shield. And the fact that David used the sling is kind of like the old adage, never bring a knife to a gunfight. Think about it that way. David brought a gun to a knife fight, and he won.
nigh to meet David, that David hastened and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth.
Okay, so I'm going to pause it there. And here we go. You ready? All right. Bring this up. I didn't have it ready a little bit sooner. Okay, there we go.
He's going from being a kid to being a warrior in that moment.
Oh, hold on.
He just bent over
There we go.
and he
He was going from being a kid to being a warrior in that moment.
He just bent over and he picked up 5 smooth stones. And these he put in his pouch. And he picked up his sling and he walked towards Goliath. And Goliath sees him and he goes, "What?"
It was insulting, actually, to send. Well, what are you sending this young, unarmed, unprotected guy against me?
The Philistine curses David and vows to feed the Israelites flesh to the birds and the wild animals. Smack talking is one of his fatal mistakes.
Never brag in a fight. That is one of the basic rules of fighting. David was listening and saying, okay, this guy's talking trash, and as soon as he makes a move, I want to put him down. And that's exactly what he did. You can get a stone of a quarter pound, and a sling can hurl that at a couple of 100 miles an hour. That's like a whip. You know, when you crack a whip, you hear that sound. That's because the tip of the whip is going faster than the speed of sound. It's a sonic boom. It's breaking the sound barrier. That stone can hit with a great degree of speed and a great amount of force.
According to the legend, all it takes to fell the giant is one shot. But for Goliath, the worst is yet to come.
He kills him with his own sword to add insult to injury. Then goes, finds his family and kills them. You know, David is seen as kind of this writing poetry and playing the flute or something. This guy was a killer. Since the Middle Ages.
So it's interesting, guys, isn't it? Isn't that interesting? When you look at it that way, the speculation is technically David cheated. He brought a gun to a knife fight. But isn't that kind of what it is when you have God on your side? It's just not fair to the enemy who comes to kill, steal, and destroy, but is under God's footstool and always will be.
So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone.
Well, I'm
and
glad you
smote
are,
the-
Casey, because the interesting thing is that this is symbolic. Okay, this is symbolic, and I'm kind of glad that you spoke right there. This is symbolic of a Goliath can be anything in your life that feels insurmountable. A Goliath can be a court case that's coming up. A Goliath could be trolls on the internet coming at you in a bad way, in a negative way, mocking you and taunting you and trying to get you to feel like you have no hope, trying to get you to feel hopeless, right? And I want you to be hopeful. God wants you to be hopeful. Whenever you're feeling like you can't do something, just cry out to a merciful God. Lord Jesus, I can't do this on my own. I can do all things through you, but I can't do this on my own. I need you, Jesus. Ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. These are all experiences that I've had personally. These aren't just like cool things that I found in the Bible, right? These are things where when I apply it to my life, it works. And when I fail to apply it, and I should have and I could have, and then I fall on my face because I try to do things on my own understanding and my own will under my own power, and then I fall flat on my face, I'm ashamed because I knew better. And I knew that what it was that I was doing is not something the Lord would have wanted me to do. That I leaned on my own understanding. I leaned on my own power. I leaned on my own ego. And in that moment is why mighty was my fall in that situation. So we have to understand that there are some battles that we don't have to fight alone.
Philistine and slew him, but there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose, and shouted, and pursued the Philistines, until thou come to the valley, and to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to Sha'araim, even unto Gath, and unto Ekron. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents.
So basically, the Israelis said, "That's it, man. We're going to remove you from the face of the earth." Right? They weren't going to play around with them. Here's another look at the battle. And
to secure the promised land, the Israelites must defeat the Philistines. But King Saul has lost God's blessing. And now he faces the Philistines' greatest champion, Goliath.
Will one of you fight me? Israelites, you win! And the Philistines will be your slaves. I win. And you will be our slaves.
Someone must fight him!
Not you, Jonathan.
The warrior who defeats him will be a rich man!
Not one man in Israel! Not one of God's people!
is it buffering really bad? Because on my video, it's buffering real bad, guys. So I'm going to pause it here, maybe let it catch up. I'm really sorry if it's buffering. Okay. We'll let it kind of catch up here for a second. Let me go ahead and start it over.
To secure the promised land, the Israelites must defeat the Philistines. But King Saul has lost God's blessing. And now he faces the Philistines' greatest
Okay, it's
champion,
doing it again then.
Goliath.
Will one of you fight me? Israelites, you win! And the Philistines will be your slaves. I win. And you will be our slaves.
Someone must fight him!
Not you, Jonathan.
The warrior who defeats him will be a rich man!
Not one man in Israel! No.
So the warrior that defeats him will be a rich man. Well, Saul, you're already king. You already are a rich man. But Saul was not up for the task, right? So, and this kind of talks about what happens during our day. You know, the quote unquote rulers of the common man send us, the common man, off to be put into a grinder because they themselves don't have the wherewithal in order to do it. So they send their betters, which they consider to be their lessers, to do their dirty work for them.
One of God's people.
I'll do it.
David, you're no soldier, you're a shepherd.
Yes, a shepherd. As I protect my sheep, God will protect me.
Where is your faith? Where is your God?
I will kill him.
You'll need this.
I'll be better without it. Yea, though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. You are with me. Thy rod and staff, they comfort me. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life.
Israel has found a champion! Don't waste my time, little boy. You're too young to die.
I will fight you!
So that's a little insight into it. So I'm gonna hold off on sharing more videos because it does seem like it's lagging us out, guys. So I do apologize for that. I hope you're still getting a good word out of this. We're going to continue on with the lesson.
And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. And when Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine, he said unto Abner, the captain of the host, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, As thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell. And the king said, Enquire thou whose son the stripling is.
Okay, so what does that say? What does that kind of tell you? So Saul's like, whose son is that? Who is this David? This person was so humble and so meek, I guess, of stature, of renowned. He wasn't boasting. He was just a simple shepherd. And he's like, inquire. I want to know whose son that is.
And as David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. And Saul said to him, Whose son art thou, thou young man? And David said, I am the son of thy servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite.
All right, so that is the lesson. It's quite interesting, and we're going to open it up to discussion here in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share, and it might lag out a little bit, but I'm going to share this in here. So go ahead, if you want to get in, if you have questions or you have comments, or you have done something in a study yourself, go ahead and enter the chat or the I'm sorry, I have a room for 10 people, so it shouldn't be a problem because there's 9 of us in here. So if you want to come up, you want to discuss, or something that you've studied, or something you want to share, the forum is open. Are you guys able to click on that link? Just curious. Okay, you are. All right. Nope, wait. Is that YouTube? Yeah, it's the right link for Streamlabs. I think it'll work. Okay. One thing we know, it sure wasn't Saul nor his son that faced that demon. Yeah. You know, it's when you get puffed up with privileges, right? When you get puffed up with titles, and when you're kind of puffing yourself up, right? Putting yourself above other people. I'm just listening and absorbing everything. Yep. So the interesting thing is this, right? So I'm going to look up a passage here. I'm going to look up a Bible verse. So if y'all want to look it up with me. So it's a mountain be thou removed. Let's find out. So it's Mark 11:23. So if we go to Mark 11:23, I can bring it up here. I'll share it right now. Hopefully you guys can see that, right? So we got Mark 11:23. Mark 11:23, King James. This is verse 21. For verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those very things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith. That's pretty definitive, right? So when we talk about a mountain of insufficiency, we're talking about a mountain of lack, a mountain of depression, a mountain of sadness and sorrow, a mountain of guilt, or a mountain of remorse, shame. Whatever these things are, if you say it and you believe it in your heart, it will happen. You don't have to be a prisoner to whatever vice or whatever despair that the devil wants to put on you. Okay? So, for verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart. So that's the key, right? Don't doubt it in your heart. When you mean it, when you say it, you have to mean it. Otherwise, it won't come true. And you might say, well, God doesn't exist, and this, that, and the other thing. Well, you got to look at the condition of your heart, right? So, and then we talk about stuff like, I don't know, we'll talk about like sowing seeds, right? A lot of people will say, well, you shouldn't talk like that because it will turn people away from God, right? Or you got to be careful what you say because it might offend people. So we talk about and condition of one's heart. Let's see what that says about that. So let's see. A lot of things about sowing seeds. Sow your seeds in the morning, and at the evening let your hands be idle. Galatians, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Let me see. Actually, I'm going to do Bible condition, or no, hold on. Seeds on stony ground. There we go. Seeds on stony ground. That'll get me in the Bible verse I'm looking for. Matthew 13:12. Here we go. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to share this. All right. So over here we talking about when you sow seeds, right? When you're out there preaching the gospel, you're out there trying to get the message out there, the good news and the bad news. Sometimes when you sow those seeds and you're giving those verses and you're just preaching the gospel, some fell on stony places where they had not much earth, and immediately they sprung up because they had no deepness of earth. That's in Matthew 13:20. But he that received the seed into stony places, the same is that heareth the word, and anon with joy receiveth it. So basically, when you hear the word and you're all excited about it, and you're all on fire for God, but you don't have any depth to your roots, it flows away, right? So we got rocky ground, right? This is the NIV. The seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy, right? But then it doesn't take hold. So then we got rocky ground. We got seed sown on thorny ground. The one who hears the word, but worries of his life, and then deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. But the seed sown on good soil is the one who hears the word. So here we go, right here. So this would be Matthew 13. So we're going to go Matthew 13:22. So we can open the Bible and turn to that. So that's what I'm looking for right here. And we're gonna go ahead and end this here pretty soon. Doesn't seem like anyone wants to come up and chat, so that's fine. So we're gonna go to Matthew 13. So let's read it. Let's kind of read it. And these are the parables about the kingdom of heaven. So I'm going to read it. We're going to actually go to Matthew. We're going to go to 13. We're just going to read 13 the whole way through. Okay. So the parable about the kingdom of heaven. On the same day, Jesus went out to the house and sat by the sea, and great multitudes were gathered together to him, so that he got into a boat and sat, and the whole multitude stood on the shore. All right. Then he spoke many things to them in parables, saying, and this is interesting, he spoke in parables a lot. And there's a reason for that. And it should illuminate that here in a minute. If it doesn't, I'll try to do my best to do that. Behold, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. We call them seed snatchers, right? They're people like the devil would want to snatch seeds. Like for instance, if Casey was in the channel and he was listening to the Word of God, somebody from his old life might come in and go, oh, "Come on, Casey, come over here and do this stuff over here. You don't want to listen to this guy. He's a Jesus freak." Right? Those are called seed snatchers. They try to snatch the seeds that God has intended for you away. All right, so birds came and devoured them. Some fell on stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell on thorns, and the thorns sprang up and choked them. But others fell on good ground and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. There's that term. And this is Jesus speaking, by the way. And the disciples came to him and said, here's where I found this very interesting. So he was talking to people, giving a lesson. And then the disciples who had been walking with him, not the multitudes, but the disciples have been walking with him this whole time, right? Asked Jesus this question. Why do you speak to them in parables? And he answered and said to them, because it has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. Meaning, I can talk in the spirit to you, but these people are in the flesh, so they don't understand. I have to talk to them of what they understand in an analogous way. I have to use analogies with them, but I can talk directly to you of things of heaven. But to them, it has not been given. For whoever has, to him more will be given, and he will have abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Therefore I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. And in them the prophecy of Israel is fulfilled, which says, hearing you will hear and shall not understand, and seeing you will see and not perceive. So this goes back to that Jesus is the Messiah, but they reject Jesus as the Messiah. So he's basically saying they're going to reject me. I'm telling them they can see with their own eyes and they can hear my words, but they refuse to see it and hear it, because their Messiah is going to be a conqueror that enslaves the rest of the world under Israel, and they won't accept anything else. Their ears are hard of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their hearts and turn, so that I should heal them. So, and this goes back to 2 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 14, I believe it is. And I'm doing this from the top of my head, so I apologize if I get it wrong a little bit. But it basically, Jesus talks in the 2 Chronicles 7:14, if my people who are called by my name would but humble themselves, hit their knees and pray, turn their face towards God and go and turn away from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and heal the land. Right? I will heal the land. So when you're sharing the gospel with someone, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting God's word. If that seed seems to fall on stony ground, or it falls on thorny ground, or good soil, any way that you shape it, you're responsible to sow the seed. You're not responsible for the condition of the heart when it receives it. So I really struggled with that, because I'm like, man, these people said they were going to come to church, and I was really just, I was giving my testimonies, and they seemed pretty excited, and I'm sitting out in front of church for like, worship's almost over, and I'm trying to be the first one to greet them at the door so they see a familiar smiling face, and they just didn't show up. And I started to feel like they were rejecting me. Well, that's my ego. That's hubris. They're not rejecting me at all. They're rejecting God. It was never about me, nor should it ever be about me. Right? And so when you invite people to church and they turn you down, you can start feeling like, was it me? Are they rejecting? Did I do something wrong? Do they not see the love I have for Christ? Do they not want to have the peace that I have in my heart? and you start to take it personally, and it makes you a little bit jaded against people. But understand, it's somebody else might come along and water the seed that you planted. You planted a seed, or maybe you came along and by saying something about God or the gospel, you may have watered somebody else's seed. But God will always provide the increase. The glory always goes to God. It doesn't go to us. But blessed are, and now he's talking to the disciples again. He said, but blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For surely I say to you that many prophets and righteous men desired to see what you see and did not see it, and hear what you hear and did not hear it. So he's like, you're lucky, because there's a lot of people that would puff themselves up thinking that they're better than you, i.e. the Pharisees and the Sadducees, right? The Sanhedrin. Therefore, hear the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, then the wicked one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. Okay? So that's a seed snatcher. That's the devil, the wicked one. This is who received the seed by the wayside. But he who received the seed on stony places, this is he who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures only for a while. For when tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, immediately he stumbles. So you have faith and you're excited and you're like, oh, I'm on fire for God. I'm on fire for God. But the very second that some kind of tribulation happens, you stumble, right? Now, he who receives seed among the thorns is he who hears the word, and the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. So your treasures are here on earth, basically. That's thorny ground. You're stuck. You're mired on thorny ground, right? But he who receives the seed on good ground is he who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and produces some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. So that's times. So you hear the word and you do 30 times, 60 times, 100 times more with it. So it's abundance, right? And another parable he put forth, saying to them is, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while the men slept, the enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the grain has sprouted and produced a crop, then the tares also appeared. So the servants of the owner came to said to him, Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares? And he said to them, an enemy has done this. The servant said to him, do you want us to go and gather them up? But he said, no, lest you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at that time of the harvest I will say to the reapers, first gather together the tares and bind them in bundles and burn them, but gather the wheat onto my barn. Okay, so that's I'm gonna end it there. I know that For Public Safety is about to go live. He's got a premiere. That's not why I'm ending the Word of God, but I think 1 hour is a perfect amount of time. No one has taken the offer to come up into the basement, so I will leave that as a job well done. Hopefully the word has been. Yep. Do you have comments? Go ahead. If you have comments, we can push it off a little bit. Any comments? Any questions? Yeah, God is good. Praise him. So understand that. So that is a parable of the harvest time. You have the wheat from the chaff, right? When God comes to harvest, the scythe is gonna go through all of us. And the good are going to get taken up and put into the barn, which would be the heaven, and the evil are going to go into the fire, where that fire burns forever but doesn't consume. Stephanie says, good morning, all. I have been listening. I hope everyone is blessed. Amen, Stephanie. It's good to see you. It's good to see you. Yep. All right, guys. I'm going to go ahead and end this right now, and I appreciate you all. Take care, and we will see you soon. We'll see you. By the way, just one last thing. So it's going to be Wednesday mornings at 10, and we're going to switch it to Saturday mornings at 10, because I don't want to get in the way of anyone going to church. Okay. If you decide to go to church on Sunday, I'll see you on the next one.